Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into the Eligibility Center at the NCAA. We are here at the headquarters of the NCAA in Indianapolis, Indiana, and my guest today is Mike Massa. He is the Managing Director for the NCAA Eligibility Center. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anthony. Nice to be with you and your followers.
Yeah, thank you. So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I went to school at Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois. It's a Division III school.
Wow, okay. So let's just go from when you graduated to where you are today. What was the path that you took to get to where you are today?
Well, it may be interesting to know that I'm probably one of the only molecular biology majors working in the NCAA national office. So I actually started my career out of college with a pharmaceutical company in pharmaceutical sales, and then did a variety of roles in marketing, sales, communications, and was actually a Six Sigma black belt in my previous role before coming to the national office here.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey, but those roles really prepared me well in a highly regulated industry for a career in intercollegiate athletics, because as you know, there are quite a few rules and regulations that we have to pay attention to here.
Sure. So what is the role of the Managing Director for the Eligibility Center?
Yeah, so my role is really to oversee all of the outreach and education that we do as the NCAA to prospective student athletes, the coaches that work with them, the high school guidance counselors, member institutions that are helping them through the initial eligibility process. And then I also have a team of folks that report through me that provide customer service, so individual questions that they have related to their accounts and the rules, the regulations, any particular issues that they may have as they're moving through their high school career in anticipation of becoming an NCAA student athlete. So I really view our team as both, we have an offense to do the education, and then we have a defense to respond to the questions of students
Sure.
that are coming through the process.
So there's 24 sports that the NCAA covers, and that's Division I, II, and III?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any difference that you see between Division I, II, and III with the different sports?
It's important to note that the Eligibility Center only certifies students for Division I and II. So we don't certify Division III. All of the eligibility for Division III is handled on campus. Oh. So we only have, each year we have about 100,000 students that come through the Eligibility Center across all 24 sports. But it's only for Division I and II that require the certification. Okay.
Can students that don't know if they're going Division III, can they apply as well?
They can. We actually just launched in 2016 a free profile page, we call it. Prior to that, we only had a paid certification account, so students that maybe don't have a clear path of where they want to go, they were only able to engage in one account that was a certification account. We heard that feedback and we created a profile page back in 2016 that's free of charge. So anybody who's interested or even thinks they might be interested in competing at an NCAA school can create that profile page for free.
Oh, and so what happens with that particular page as a free page compared to someone that's going to Division I to a Division II school?
Yeah, so that gets them in our system. It lets us know that they're interested in potentially competing at an NCAA school, and we have a team of communications folks that work on regular updates, key reminders, and things like that to help those students along their journey as they're making their decision. And then when the time is right, if they start to be recruited by a Division I or Division II school, they can transition that account, pay the certification fee, and then they're on down that next path.
Gotcha. So what is the requirements of the Eligibility Center for those students?
So the Eligibility Center really exists to certify two different aspects of a student's eligibility. One is academics and one is amateurism. So we want to make sure that the students that are coming to the NCAA are amateurs, so they fill out a questionnaire that asks questions about their sports participation history. And then we also ask for their academic information, which consists of their transcripts, their test scores, and their graduation credentials. So really the academic side is helping to ensure that that student's ready for the rigors of a college campus. Those are the two aspects. The eligibility requirements themselves are different for Division I and Division II. Both divisions require the students to graduate from high school. Both require 16 core courses, which must be NCAA approved core courses. So it's a different aspect, but we do review the coursework completed at all high schools to make sure that they're college preparatory in nature for the students, and those are the only courses used in their certification. It's a key piece, I think, for parents and students to remember as they're going through high school to make sure, A, you're going to a school that has an approved NCAA core course list, and B, the courses that you're taking will count towards your certification. You'd really hate to get to the senior year and have a surprise at the end, so we advise all students to work very closely with their high school guidance counselors.
So core courses, the sciences, the maths, the English?
Yeah, so the core subject areas that we're looking at are English, math, science, and social science. For Division I, those classes must have a 2.3 GPA in those core classes. For Division II, it's a 2.2. And then the test score is actually a sliding scale. So the higher your GPA, the lower your test score can be, and vice versa.
Okay, now I've had the vice president of Temple University on, and they said that they were the 1,000th school that took test optional now. What is the NCAA doing with test optional? Is there anything that the NCAA is doing with that?
So we're looking at that very closely. We have seen some schools moving that direction from an admissions standpoint. Probably another good reminder for your viewers is that NCAA eligibility is very different than college admissions. So admissions requirements may change and could be very specific to the university. So Temple may have a very different requirement than, say, Stanford or the University of Texas or some other schools. So it is important that you separate those two. The NCAA eligibility requirements do still have a test score component, so we do need students who wish to compete at an NCAA school to take the test.
So that could happen down the road where the NCAA comes up with something else?
Correct. Yeah, we could see that evolve over time as the eligibility standards have evolved through the years.
So now, how does the NCAA find if a student did something professionally? Is there a method that goes, oh, yeah, you did something wrong?
Yeah, so that sports participation questionnaire that I spoke about is our first indicator. So we require an ethical disclosure that you're providing full and complete information in the submission of information to us, and we're looking at those responses to potentially drive some additional research if needed. We also ask our member institutions to meet with their student athletes and their recruits to make sure they understand who may have potential issues for us to look into.
So the initial eligibility center, what is that? How does that all work?
Yeah, so we've been working hard to streamline the certification process for students. Like I mentioned, we have 100,000 come through each year. And really, a student creates an account with us, and if they create the profile page, then they'll need to transition if they need a certification. But the key piece of information we need from them are all of their high school transcripts. If they've gone to 3 different high schools, we need one from each high school that attended. We can't just take the last one. We need their test scores directly from the testing agency, so ACT or SAT. We need their graduation credential. So for international students, sometimes that's a different document than a high school transcript. And then we need all their sports participation information for their amateurism certification. Once we have all that information and we know that an NCAA member school is interested in recruiting them, the schools have a recruiting list that they're connected with us on. So when a student's activated on those lists and we have all their information, they move in line for review, and it takes us about 10 days to do the initial review. If there's something in that case that we need to ask more questions about, we'll do so via a task in their account.
And then the customer service that you have as part of your group, do they handle specific regions of the country, or they just handle whoever comes in and
Yeah,
that's it?
Next call in. We have one funnel, and so move in line, and we have a team of folks that are available to answer questions. If we assign one of those tasks and we're not quite sure what's needed, or we also support questions from high school counselors as well. So if they're concerned about a particular course or how to update their list with us, we handle those questions too.
So is there a tier of how it works? Do you ever get involved? Where I'm coming from is, does it go to a customer service representative and then all of a sudden it starts to escalate and then you end up getting involved?
Occasionally, yeah. I try to keep that list as small as possible, but it does happen. And some of the higher profile issues that you may hear about in the news media, those are probably the ones that I'd be most hands-on, working hand in glove with our member institutions and the high school, potentially even the student athlete.
So what are some of the tips that you can give student athletes that are going through the Eligibility Center?
I'd say first and foremost is to know the requirements. So educate yourself on the requirements and to register with us early. Mention the free profile page again, that if you're not sure that where your path might lead, go ahead and get in our system, let us know, raise your hand that you're interested in getting updates. We only do them about once a quarter, so it's not going to flood the inbox. It's a great way to stay up to date. Also then start working with your high school guidance counselor. As I mentioned before, we like no surprises in our system, so the students I think appreciate that too. Yeah. So as they work with their guidance counselor, make sure they're in the right courses to where a certification can just move smoothly from there.
So do you see students trying to get into the Eligibility Center as a freshman in high school, or do you see them, junior year, senior year?
Yeah, we recommend sophomore year, but we do see some students register very early. They know that they're interested and they come in the system early. I think the balance we see are later in the game. So junior, senior year is when the most certification or most accounts are created. So is that the most recommended, is junior, senior year? No, we would really like to have students register their sophomore year or even earlier. And if it's just the free account, that's fine, and then you can transition later as you progress. But as soon as possible that we know you're interested, we'll start to communicate with you and then evolve from there. So do you send out the emails to them just saying, we need your transcript up? We need something of some sort? Yeah, early on, some of the reminders are more general in nature. So they're looking at some suggestions on resources that you may use in your college planning, reminders that you may need to, certain deadlines that you may need to meet with your financial aid requirements, things like that. The certification accounts, we're providing more detail about what's missing in the account. Yeah. So we may be more specific in what the students are needing. And then is it junior year and senior year where you're asking more times about the transcripts? Because that's a big thing at the college level, is to get the transcripts. Yep, exactly. And so we're asking anything that we notice that may be potential cause for potential delay in the account. We would make proactive calls. We're doing a lot more of that now, trying to get out in front of issues, looking for missing information. We would give notice of those. We're also doing a lot more preliminary evaluations now. So students that are coming through, we're advising them to submit us transcripts after their junior year. If we know they're being recruited, our team is doing evaluations on those accounts on a regular basis, and so that gives some insight for parents, for students, and counselors on what might be missing, what might cause a potential issue for the final certification. So what is a prospective student athlete in your mind? Prospective student athlete, I mean, there's 8 million high school student athletes out there, so all of them could be potential student athletes. When I think about who our audience is and who our team is speaking with, we're looking at that whole population. Really only about 200,000 of those end up registering with us each year. but we don't know who those are. So we rely very heavily on the relationship and the partnerships that we have with coaching, with the coaching staffs and with high school guidance counselors to help us get our message, which is out for everybody, down to the folks that really need it.
So do you get a lot of phone calls to the customer service from the guidance counselors, the athletic directors, the coaches themselves?
A fair number, yeah. Not too many from the coaches. I think most of them are working through the parents or through their guidance counselors to get answers to questions. But it's about 250,000 phone calls every year we manage at the NCAA.
So do you see a lot of parents making the phone calls, or the students? Would you rather the students making the phone calls?
You know, it's always nice when a student's taking accountability for their own next steps, but by and large, it's parents that are calling on the student's behalf.
And what do you find as a major question that the parents are calling in for?
More times than not, they're looking, did you get my information? I just had it sent. Is it in yet? When's it going to be done? When's my certification going to be
So they're just double checking.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of just assurance that it looks in the account like you have everything, but I just want to be sure that we're all squared away, all set for review. And in fact, most of them are. But we do have occasions where some accounts have some complexities to them where we needed to task out to the high school or back to the student for some more information. So we'll get phone calls about those additional requests and what specifically is needed. How do we fulfill those requests?
Now, do you get a lot of international students that don't speak the language?
You know, by and large, most students, if they're coming to the United States, they speak English fairly well, and so we're able to connect with them both on the phone and in written form.
Great.
So that's not been too big of an issue for us. Occasionally, we do need to have someone from a translator perspective to help us get through some of that language barrier, but by and large, we deal most in English.
Great. How about relationships with the Eligibility Center and the institutes themselves, the colleges? What's the kind of relationship that you have?
You know, so we work very closely with our member institutions. They tell us, as I mentioned, who they're recruiting. So in our database, they're activating students on their recruiting list. And once they do that, then we can be much more direct in our communication with them. We're providing education about our process and what they can be telling their students, that they know who they're recruiting, to help make sure that the students are prepared and that they're going to meet the initial eligibility standards, getting the right information on the front end.
Yeah.
And then we also have a dedicated membership phone line so that when students moving through the system, if they have questions about their certification, we're at their beck and call to address the questions related to their students. And
is the customer service line open 24 hours a day, or?
I don't know. I think I'd probably have some upset employees with that. We're open for the membership 8:30 to 5:30 Eastern Time, for the general public and student athletes 9 to 5.
Okay. So if the school is far away, let's say it's University of Hawaii.
Yeah.
They're making a phone call to you early morning.
Yeah, if they need to talk to somebody live, we do have some time zone issues there. Hawaii specifically, and a lot of our international business is done via email.
Okay.
So they can let us know that they have a particular question. We have a little time to research that, and we can get a response back to them.
And how about at the college level? What do you find as the telephone calls at the college level? Are they from the administrators, the coaches, the assistants to the coaches?
Yeah, we've got pretty strict guidelines around only having questions from the compliance offices. We want to make sure that we have a single point of contact on our campuses that are dealing directly with the students and directly with the Eligibility Center. Mm-hmm. So we have a contact list that we maintain for each of our member institutions, and those are the approved contacts that we work with directly so that we don't get the telephone game going from multiple different voices. So we have a pretty clear line of communication with each of them.
So now the compliance officer is the one that's contacting the NCAA. Mm-hmm. How's the process at the college? Do you have that process with the compliance officer saying, hey, the coach needs to talk to you about all of these kids, and then you tell us, and is that the process, how it works, or do you have a different process?
Yeah, the campuses manage the communication on their own. So we would, a lot of times the compliance officer, occasionally will have the coach on the phone with them, but more times than not the compliance office will interact with us, and then they will go back to the coaching staff with the student and relay the message of where we are, what's needed as far as next steps go.
So then that brings me to my next question. That was previous question. What's the major question that you get from the college level that comes up?
Yeah, so by and large, the compliance offices are pretty up to speed on the rules, the regulations, how things play out. So the questions that we get from our member institutions are usually more technical in nature and really seeking to understand why a particular decision went a certain way, or why a decision was made on a document that they weren't expecting, perhaps. So some of those questions are a little more detailed and they're fewer, but they're more complex than the questions that we get from.
And does that ever get escalated to you?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Some of those can get, when you have a difference of opinion on how something should play out.
Yeah.
We do have adjudication mechanisms for a decision to go to a committee of the membership if there is a dispute between how a decision should play out.
Yeah.
So that's a way to resolve a potential misalignment, I guess, between our interpretation and what the membership is looking for.
Now, do you travel to the different institutions? Do you do any type of traveling with the NCAA?
Yeah, occasionally we try to hit conference meetings, and we have a couple of national level meetings where we're bringing large groups of our compliance officers together. So those are the events that we try to optimize our travel time out there, where we're hitting a number of our members at once. We also send, we've got a cross-functional outreach team that goes to national guidance counselor conventions and some regional guidance counselor conventions, some of the major coaching conventions as well we have educational presence at. So when it comes to being out there to deliver our messages, we've tried to engage a number of audiences because, like I said, we really rely on them to carry the message down to the individual students and work with the individual families to make sure that they're making decisions that are going to prepare them for the future.
Now, when you have the college institutions coming to you at a conference, is there workshops that you do with them? Is there different types of workshops?
Yeah, for the compliance administrators, definitely. We do a lot of case studies with them when it comes to back to where are the disputes? Why did a particular case or fact pattern go this way versus that way? We do a lot of updates of process and technical enhancements that we have rolled out. So I mentioned again that we're continually working to streamline the way the certification process works. So we want to make sure that they're up to speed on all those so that they can educate their students properly.
Do you see any improvements to the website or the process itself? Can you tell us anything that's going to be improved or anything like that?
Well, right now we're working a lot in the international space. You can imagine we have about 170 different countries that we have students coming to the U.S. from, not that many each year, but in totality, but we only have one academic standard. So the process by which we convert those standards and this academic systems in all these different countries into one academic review is challenging. So we've been working a lot in that space. I think we've made a lot of improvements and enhancements. In particular, this is both for domestic and international, the electronic submission of transcripts. So domestically, high schools can upload a transcript directly to us, which has made the delay in mail processing a lot more efficient. And so that's another reason to get those 6-semester transcripts to us. They can be done very easily via upload. We can review them if the student's being recruited and give students a picture of where they're at.
That seems like a futuristic thing that it's going to be a lot easier for the guidance counselors to just take students that want to play at anything and just keep on uploading whatever.
Yeah, we've had a few of those instances where one counselor will upload transcripts for every student in their population, and that's of course not the intended consequence, but when it's that easy, you can run that risk.
Right. So is there guidelines that you give to the guidance counselors?
Yeah. We've done a lot of education with them about only submit the transcripts for the students, and it's a 1-to-1 correlation with their account, so that it goes directly into the student's account. Really expedites the processing times. Yeah,
because I see it with financial aid is doing that a lot now, where it's getting a lot easier to do the financial aid process. You have the government involved, where now people can just take their tax returns and upload it right into the financial aid, and they don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
So you're doing basically the same thing at the high school level with the transcripts.
Yep. 40,000 high schools out there, and like I mentioned before, we don't know who or where the students are coming from, but that option is certainly available.
Now, do you have a lot of members just going to the conventions? Do they ever go to the high schools to talk to the high schools?
Yeah, through our outreach program, we actually allow high schools to request a presentation from us, and obviously we can't get to all of them that would like to have a representative from the NCAA come out and do a college night presentation about the eligibility standards. There's actually a form online that you can find to submit a request, and when we can't get to those, we partner a lot with our local member institutions that might be in that vicinity to let them do the presentation. They can go out and provide the same level of education using the same resources and materials we would. The other option, we have a high school advisory group as well that we work with across the nation, and a lot of times our high school advisory group members will get engaged and conduct those presentations on our behalf.
Fantastic. Well, we're coming to the end of our show. It goes fast, right?
It does.
So usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there and the students, sons and daughters, that are going through the Eligibility Center?
Well, I'd say, first and foremost, register with us early. Educate yourselves on the materials that are out there, the academic standards. NCAA.org/playcollegesports is a great website that we have general information all the way down to very specific, nuanced questions and answers. And then work very closely with your guidance counselors to make sure that you're taking the right courses if you think this is a path that even you might want to go down, so that there's no surprises at the end of the certification process.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.